Clormo Industries Music Group, bringing you part number 8 of the Logic Pro X tutorial series on making sample beats. And I'm gonna be talking about some mastering basics. I understand that the concept of mastering, it's a little bit intimidating, maybe a little bit confusing for some people, especially if you have never done it, but it's actually, I don't want to say quite easy to master, pun intended, but it's easy to get into it, at least at the basic level, and that's what I want to show you in this video. And with that being said, I'm gonna jump right into what we have in Logic Pro. We have a project that has a few tracks, which is good to demonstrate this concept, and I also have some samples in there. And disclaimer, as with the other videos, this topic here, what I'm gonna be showing is not exclusive for beats or sample beats or original beats. It's useful for any genre or music that you make, so please stay tuned and pay attention, because you're gonna learn a few things that are gonna be useful for you if you use Logic Pro X for anything or any other DAW. The first thing I'm gonna do is play this track, which has some mastering on it, and then play it without those mastering elements, and you're gonna notice right away the differences. So let's press play here. Now this part of the track, I'm gonna turn off my mastering elements. And I'm gonna stop it. I think that you can notice right away that the first thing, or the first difference, is that my loudness goes away. The track started louder or loud, and then when I took the mastering elements off, the track went down in loudness, and it felt a little bit dull, right? Like nothing really stood out from the whole mix. And that's a few of the things that, or in essence, that mastering is going to bring you. Mastering is going to offer bringing the elements that you want to highlight on your track. It's going to bring them to the forefront, add brightness to the whole thing, and then add that last layer of gluing between the tracks or instruments, which in this case were used to create this beat. And now, if you were paying attention to my cursor, all I did when I said I took the mastering elements out was I turned off this guys here, which is a linear EQ or a linear phase EQ, a multipressor, which is a multi-band compressor, and then an adaptive limiter. There are many ways to, or many elements that you can add to your audio effects to master a track, but I think that with keeping it simple and keeping it basic, I'm gonna concentrate on this 3 because it gives you a good rough starting point to get your tracks or beats with some level of mastering. And now, this is something that you probably shouldn't strive to be an expert on, but strive to be good at it, at least understand how to get from point A to point B and give a higher level of quality to your beats. So before I get you to this point, I want to talk to you about preparing an archival master, which is something that I don't do a lot because I have dealt with some basic mastering for quite some time now, probably a few months, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is that I feel more comfortable with not preparing one and then just saving a different version of the project, where I will apply my mastering on. So to prepare yourself for that archival mastering step, which is good because you will get nothing more than a uncompressed bounce of your mix for either giving it to a sound engineer or for you to prepare it separately. To get to that point, we need to do something first and foremost. I'm gonna first reset my channel strip so that we don't have anything and we can get to this step, and I'm gonna hide the output. And the very first thing you need to do is bring your mixer. So you bring your mixer, you have all your tracks here, right? All your individual track faders. And let's say you are happy with the mix, you going back to the whole tutorial series, let's say you found the sample that you wanted, found the tempo, extracted that sample, chopped it if you had to chop it and use an ESX24 sampler, or you did some flex time and then you added some drums, or sampled some drums and then you added some bass lines, or you sampled some bass lines, did some EQing, put some effects, did some panning, did some rough mixing, and you're happy with all that. Your end result, what I have here right now, let's say it's a result of that. I have everything that I wanted. You open your mixer and you are gonna play your track one more, and you're gonna pay attention to your output fader. Specifically, if you're clipping, never give something to a sound engineer or start your mastering with stuff clipping. It's just not going to be a truthful representation of what you have, and then a sound engineer may get mad that you are not doing your due diligence and you're not being thorough and giving him something that we'll have to remix a little bit to get it out of the clipping and then master it, right? So let's give it a play. I'm just gonna skip a little bit to where all the elements are, because that's where you know when all your elements in the beat are playing. That's when you know how good you are here. I'm gonna pause that. I'm not clipping, which is good, but let's say that if I was clipping here, and let's say I was clipping by about half a decibel or anything above 0, I want to come into the mixer and take care of that. One easy way to do that, or the most basic way of handling that, would be to select all your tracks, and you can do this in the mixer window by selecting your first track and then going to the very last one, hitting shift, selecting it, and I have all of them. Notice that I'm not gonna take any of my aux channels, and depending on the level of clipping that you have, you want to bring those individual faders down by, let's say for example half a decibel. I would take that down by about 2 decibels, so I leave enough headroom and make sure that I'm not clipping. And that's why you need the mastering, because that's gonna bring your whole track down in loudness, and you have to find a way to bring that loudness back up without clipping. So all you do is select all of those guys and just pick one, and when you reduce by whatever amount you want to reduce, everything else is going to be reduced by a proportionate amount, in relation to what you took. This in this example would be this track. I took it down from 3.6 to 5.6, so that was 2 decibels. I'm just gonna bring it up again to where it was, just so we keep working with the files as it originally was. But that's how you take care of that. You do not take care of it by lowering your master fader volume, because that's not a true representation of the track. So with that out of the way, making sure that you're not clipping, we are ready to prepare our archival master, and that's nothing more than just bouncing it. I'm just gonna do Command B, and if you don't know, you can go to File, Bounce, Project or Section. And that's gonna bounce the whole thing, and this brings up this screen here that you have seen in previous videos, and I said that I was gonna explain it in the mastering tutorial because it this tutorial or this topic serves better to explain all of this. So when you bring this bounce window, you have your what's called the destination. This is nothing more than the audio format in which you want to export this, and we want to prepare a unformatted full format, or I should say uncompressed full format version of my mix. And for that reason, I'm gonna check the box on PCM, but I'm gonna just briefly talk about this. MP3 obviously is the compressed format widely used online. M4A is what you will get from a file from the iTunes store, and then burning to a CD. You know what a CD is, you know what a CD audio is. So each one of these has its own separate uh, settings. What we're gonna deal for the archival master and master, we're gonna deal with PCM, which is uncompressed audio. Right away, you have your file format. So AIF and core audio file, these are Apple formats, and I never use them. If you, in your travels, in your practice, you find that you can use them for something, go ahead and do it. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. But Wave is a Windows-based file format that's more widely accepted and more suitable for all every system out there. So you want to go with your archival master, you want to go with file format Wave. Now the resolution, if you don't know anything about this, before I keep going, you make sure that you research it online separately as well if you want to learn more about it. But going on resolution, you have I have 16 bit and 24 bit. Now when I created the file, I know I was at 24 bit, so that's just when you create a new file and it gives you those options there, and that's what I have for my resolution. So I'm gonna pretty much just leave this resolution and the sample rate same as the project was at the beginning, even though most most audio playing and CD basically constrains you to 16 bit, you know, and 16 bit is gonna create a little bit of loss, right, from 24 to 16 bit, and that's reflected in the more quieter areas. But at this stage, to create the archival master, we're just gonna leave it uncompressed. Sample rate 44.1 kilohertz. It's pretty much the standard. You should leave it like that. Now file type, split or interleaved. Split is, I think it's only used by Pro Tools. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's just Pro Tools is the one that uses split. So it's just gonna create a bounce on your whole mix with left and right, which will be the everything that's in the left channel and the right channel in separate files, and then when you bring them, in example, into Pro Tools, you will bring them that way. Interleaved is just one straight through every channel, everything that's in the whole sound spectrum into one file, and that's what you want. Really, Logic is gonna use interleaved, and I think if you bring a split file, it's just gonna merge it, and vice versa. Like in Pro Tools, you could bring an interleave and it's gonna split it because that's the way it should do it. Dithering at this stage, we don't need to do any dithering. We're gonna leave it none. And now I don't wanna add this to the project itself nor to iTunes. And now we go back to the left side here, the start and the end. You need to make sure that you have the whole track, right, from the very first from the very beginning to the very end. The mode real-time and offline for your archival master, since what you want to do with the archival master is just have an uncompressed version before mastering. You should really go with the real time so it starts rendering it as it plays, just in case if halfway you find some errors that you missed or something that you wanted to add, you can stop it right there and go back and basically go back to the mixing stage before the mastering. I'm gonna leave it at offline because I just wanna show you how the next step right really quickly, and then make sure that you include the audio tail. The audio tail, when you export something, is nothing more than the end of every any effect that you have in your track, like reverb or echo or delay or EQing effects. You know, when you, for example, if you were to press a note in the keyboard and it plays, and then the echo or an effect will carry that sound a little bit longer, include audio tail would do that, so it will make sure that everything plays. And this is very important, like for the end of the track, if it ends with some delay or something like that, or if it has reverb, it's just gonna make sure that it plays everything and includes it in your bounce. And then for normalize, I'm gonna leave it off because I'm not clipping. For one, I want to keep it as it is right now. I want to keep a true representation of the file, but either way, overload protection only will, what it will do is peak those areas or that in the track that are very loud and that might uh, um, create clipping, and bring them down so they don't clip. And normalize on, what it will do is take everything and bring it to the highest or the loudest peak that is not clipping in your track, and it's going to bring everything in the mix up to that level. So for that, we're going to leave it off, and then we're going to press with all that set up, and we're happy with that. We're going to hit OK, and now I have here my folder for all the tutorials, and I'm going to skip it master and basics, and I'm going to bounce it. And you see the playhead is just rendering everything, and you can see that this step, like bouncing, and you're gonna see that mastering also, it's a little bit consuming on your PC, so I'm gonna give you some pointers in case you have a lower end system. But that's it, you created your archival master, and now you have that pre-master version saved there. Another way that you can do this is just do a save as of your current project and name it mastering in the end, and just go right away and start adding your mastering elements to the master fader. And you already have your project, a version of the project before that, that's gonna be representative of everything that you have. Another trick that, if you don't have a high-end system, I don't use it, and not to brag, but I have a pretty good system that I haven't had the need to use it, but if I ever do, I will. So I'm gonna share it with those that don't have a high-end system. You can bounce all of the tracks again in place and replace everything that you have here, and that way you're gonna just have the audio as it was played, and you won't have any of the plugins or effects in your tracks, which is usually what will take most out of the CPU, right? So if you double click over here, you're gonna notice how much you're using from your resources. So for doing that, you similar to bounce, right? You go to file and you can do bounce and replace tracks, and it's always going to ask you before bouncing. It's recommended that you save the project. That's why I said that if you need to do this, it's going to be very beneficial to do a save as, name it mastering, do this, and do it, and right away it will be all the tracks are going to be replaced by just full audio versions of the sounds that we have here. I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to say don't save and cancel. So that's my archival master. Now let's get into the mastering phase itself. So if you were paying attention to what I had in the master fader when I first played the track that had mastering, I had three things in here. I had a linear phase EQ, I had a multiband compressor, and I had an adapter limiter. So the linear phase EQ is accessed by, similar to the channel EQ, you go to audio effects, EQ, linear phase EQ, stereo. And the linear phase EQ looks exactly as the channel EQ. Only difference is that it's a higher quality. Um, it's much better EQ technology. So it's left for, usually it's used and it's left for the mastering phase, because you're not gonna go crazy making a lot of EQ to different tracks. It's just gonna be to the full mix, right? So you don't have to go crazy here. All you do is just add a little bit to the areas or to the frequencies or to the instrument that you wanna highlight in your beat and you want to bring to the forefront, right? And for this, as with everything else in Logic Pro or in DAW, you have presets. In this case, you can go to EQ tools. No, sorry, mastering, obviously. And there's already a few presets here. I would suggest that you start with Final Mix Hip Hop preset. Not just because it says hip hop, but just to see what it does. As you can see here, it's giving a little bit of gain to the low end, which would be where you want your kick and your sub bass to be. I wouldn't necessarily agree to have it at 42.5 hertz. I would probably have it more around here. But that's gonna depend on where your frequencies are, and refer back to the EQ tutorial if you wanna have more details on that. But you can start with this preset and play your file again, and just try to notice what the differences are by just doing that. I'm gonna turn it on now. On, off. You notice it has a little bit of brightness, and that's because of this guy here. I'm gonna stop it. So you can start that way. You have your same options. You have your analyzer, which was off, and that was on purpose, so you didn't get confused with all the wavelengths. But now you see that my kick and my bass, this frequency here is a little bit more live, right? And then my snare, which would be around here. Let's say I want to give a little bit more to that snare. I'm gonna pause it. So what you do with your linear phase EQ is just, in summary, bring to the forefront what you want to highlight in your track, and that's up to you, right? What you want to focus on is up to you, so I'm gonna leave that up to you. But you don't need to use all of the bands. You don't need to, at this stage, you shouldn't need to do any of that, right? Because you did it in the mixing phase, and this here is just giving a little bit of gentle highlights here and there. So that's what the linear phase EQ does. So I'm just gonna leave it. I'm just gonna leave it like that. Doesn't matter. I already have a preset my own preset, which I can bring up later. Second thing that I mentioned is the multiband compressor, which is called a multipressor, and you find that in, again, audio effects, dynamics. You have compressor, you will go to multipressor, and this is how your multipressor looks. So your multipressor, one of the very first things that it does is splits your spectrum into 4 main bands, because again, you're just gonna concentrate your effort in adding presence to certain areas. Here, what I would suggest is to, because we're dealing with beats, and for other musical genres it might be different, you probably want to have your splits in a way that in band number 1 or split number 1, it's around, maybe here, around 130, 150, 100, something like that. So you have your kick and most of your bass sound in there, and then part number 2 you might want to open up a little bit, because that will be a little bit more, or you should try to structure a little bit more to be the warmer part of your sound. And then 3 should be where your vocals and keys and the high parts of your keyboards are. And then the 4 is nothing more than your sizzle, your that brightness of the whole track. So you can, as you saw, I just clicked and dragged and made the splits there. Again, there's a factory setting for hip hop, final hip hop compressor. Start with that, see how they did it, and take it from there. It's a good starting point, but I would suggest, obviously, that once you feel comfortable, you take it from the very beginning. And now a few things that I just wanted to talk about here or reiterate. You have your attack and your release. Obviously, your attack is the time it takes for your compression to take effect, and then the release is how much time it takes for that compression to wear off. So that's gonna be determined by your compression threshold, which is measured in decibels. So in this case here, I'm gonna compress everything that it's above that this number here, whatever I have here. Remember, I'm using this preset, so it's telling me this number, but it's gonna be whatever you make it out to be. And another thing that's very important is your gain makeup. Since you are compressing, which means you are taking stuff down so they don't clip, then you can make up that gain. And I'm exaggerating here, but you can make up that gain back. It was at 0, but you can make that gain back up, and that's what that's gonna do again is bring a little bit more loudness without clipping anything. And then your thresholds and your ratios are controlled down here. A neat thing about this is that you can, let's play the file, let's play it again. Just with the preset, right? I'm gonna turn that up. That immediately brings the loudness up. And you notice it's gonna be clipping. That's because I don't have a limiter, which is gonna be important, and it's gonna be the next step. So I'm gonna stop the file. And a good thing is that you can also solo each band, and you can double check that what you have in your splits is what you want. Like in number 1, I solo number 1 and pay attention to it. You can clearly hear the bass, I hear the kick, and that's gonna help you with the splits. Let's go to the version here. So those are your basic functions, or the basic functionality and ways that you should incorporate your multipressor into your master fader to do some basic mastering. This here, this fader here for the output, if you bring it up or down, it's also gonna affect the loudness. So you saw that in this minus 3.6, I think it was. In this preset, it was at minus 3.6, right? So it's making up some gains here and making stuff a little bit louder, and then trying to bring it down a notch a little bit so it doesn't sound convoluted or distorted, right? So this is also another thing that you want to adjust depending on what you want to bring up in your mix. And I'm gonna close it. Hope that was helpful. If you have questions, just make sure to ask, because I understand it could be a little bit confusing. But start with your presets. There's nothing wrong with starting with your presets, but in the end, what you want to make sure is that you are compressing and making up gain, and then listening to everything that you really want to highlight, and keep that as loud as possible without sounding distorted, and obviously without clipping. Although at this stage it's clipping because I already went above my thresholds. And now I'm just gonna bring up my adaptive limiter, and that is gonna be again same place. And I'm go to my dynamics, and it's the very first one, my adaptive limiter. And this is how it looks now. Maybe if you haven't updated Logic in a while, it will certainly look different, but this is your adaptive limiter. And the most important thing about the adaptive limiter is that you're gonna create a ceiling, right? You are gonna add a last layer of gain or loudness once you added some presence here with the linear phase EQ, and you added you added a little bit of compression to some of the areas in your different bands. Now you're gonna make sure that you add a ceiling to the whole mix, so you can add a final layer of gain or loudness without going above a certain decibel level, which is gonna prevent the clipping. And why is it known adaptive? Is because it's gonna adapt to along the different peaks of your track, right? Obviously, as you have introduced more elements into the beat, the peaks or your signal is gonna change up and down, louder, quieter, louder, etc., etc. So the limiter is gonna adapt the ceiling that you are applying here to those peaks, right? So if there's a peak that's below your ceiling, it's not gonna do much, right? But if your gain is very high and your ceiling is very low, let's say I had my gain at 9 and my ceiling at 0, it's pretty much gonna take everything and boost it up so much that it will have to do a harder and tougher type of limiting to be able to adapt everything how it's going and keep it at 0, which is it's probably gonna sound awful. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with both at 0 with my gain and ceiling. I'm gonna play a busy part, and let's pay attention to without and with, and how it changes as I change the gain and the ceiling, okay? Clip. I'll bring it on. Notice right away that my ceiling is 0, right? No longer clipping at my peak level. It's at 0 because that's my ceiling. Say I want to change that and make it half a decibel, just to make sure, just to be certain that it's not gonna clip at any instance, so that something's gonna go through the cracks. And let's bring it back to my peak level. It's now half a decibel, which is the ceiling that I put. And you can make this, you know, anything you want. If it's 0, it's not that it's wrong, you know. You just wanna have that extra layer of confidence there. Clips. Stops clipping. Now I'm gonna deal with my gain. I'm gonna bring it forward. Start bringing my gain up. And it's telling me that my input right now, it's a little bit over. You know, it's about half a decibel over. This is important, you know, because you usually don't want to have your input through the limiter be too much above the 0, because, you know, you won't be able to give a lot of loudness or gain without making it sound distorted. Right now it doesn't sound that awful. You notice how that sounded? That sounded terrible, you know. So don't think that just because you can add gain and you have a ceiling and it's not gonna clip, that it's not gonna sound bad, because it's compressing, it's limiting, it's adding out artifacts basically to your sound. So don't underestimate what this is doing here. So one way to make sure that your input then it's not too loud, if let's say I wanted to make it a little bit over 4, because that's the area where my whole loudness is where I want it to be without distorting, then you have to go back to your multipressor, right? You have to do a little bit more compression. And actually, if I play it, you're gonna notice that, right here. So I can take care of that by bringing this knob down a little bit. Right there. Let's see. That seems good enough. This is not clipping anymore at this stage, so now I can add a little bit more gain, and that way I bring my loudness up without screwing up anything else. And that's pretty much it. You did some basic mastering to your track. That's why I said it's not that complicated. You can use this 3 to get some, and it's just a few knobs that you need to play around with and change and adjust to get more loudness, more fullness, more presence in your track. But what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna bring my channel strip setting. I'm gonna do Shift Command M, and that's gonna bring my output, which is just taking the name of this channel strip setting that I had. But I'm just gonna change the name just so you don't confuse it. It's just your output, right? Which you see when you get in on any other individual track, you're gonna see your output here, right? So now your file, your beat, it's ready for, it's mastered. And you want to do your final bounce with the mastering. One note that I want to make, or that I want to highlight. I don't know, I've said it in the beginning. I have seen other people, you know, sort of mastering, you make sure you clip, blah, blah, blah. When you're dealing with the beat, you don't have any vocals. So let me repeat myself. You don't have any vocals, so you want to make sure you have enough headroom for the vocals. So Not only don't you have the clip, you have to make sure that you have at least 6 or 7, from 5 to 7 decibels there to play with, not only with the vocals, but with any other individual track that you may want to adjust a little bit before doing your basic mastering or your final mastering phase. So make very very sure that when you're dealing only with beats without vocals, that you also apply that concept here. Apply that. It's not a rule, but it's a good convention. If you have vocals, just not clipping might be good enough. Again, an expert may tell you otherwise. Trust them. They just trust whatever you learn in a few months dealing with this yourself. Okay. I'm gonna Now we're ready for our final bounce, and again, all you do is just go to File, Bounce, Project or Section. I already explained all of this to you. There's going to be a few changes. Since it's your final bounce, you may want to do an MP3 version of it. You can add your tags. You can set your stereo and mono bit rates, and you can set also your quality. Although when you do the use best encoders, it's going to do it at the highest quality. You can also, if you wanted to do an M4A version, you could do so, and you can also burn it to a CD if you want to make a beat CD to give out to somebody. But at this stage, we're ready for the final thing. Things that won't change. Make sure that you have your start and your end. The mode here now, you should make it offline, because now you're past the pre-mastering stage and you already have a version before mastering. So you already passed that stage, so just leave it as offline. You don't take off your audio tail. Now normalize. At this point, you may want to make it, change it to on, so all the quieter parts are brought up to the highest peaks. And this is because when we go here to the resolution, we're gonna change it to 16 bit, because pretty much every system, or most systems out there, just playing 16 bit. So 24 bit does not make a huge difference, and you already have a 24-bit version before this. So you make it 16-bit so it's compatible with most systems, and then you normalize the audio so that everything it's as loud as it possibly can without losing a lot of quality. And this is where dithering comes in. So dithering, what it's gonna do is smooth over those areas that are being brought down to 16 bit, those that are being reduced in quality, so to say, from 24 to 16. And dithering is gonna help you between the resolution and the normalize to make sure that everything it's where it needs to be without losing. In the quiet areas, it will be more noticeable again without losing quality. To be honest with you, with beats, that's probably not that important, because most of your stuff is gonna be a little bit louder. You're not gonna have passages there with just a little wind instruments or strings that are very quiet. Like if you were doing classical music, probably this would be more beneficial to use, or it would be more noticeable, because there are a lot of quiet areas in classical music, or similar type of music. So dithering, there's 4 options here, but really you just want to go with the UB22HR, because that's the newest version, and it's really the only one that you have, other than the 3 old Logic versions or algorithms that you have from when Logic was not even Apple's, when it was not owned by Apple. This is the latest standard, the one that's kept in higher regard. So I don't want to confuse you. Just leave it. Let's just leave it at that, and you're gonna select your dithering there. So at this stage you need it, and that's it. You have all your settings. You're gonna okay, and same thing, you're just gonna export that as a WAV file, and there you have it. That's gonna be how you went from preparing your project for mastering, different ways that you can prepare it with different versions, then adding the plugins or effects that are gonna produce a louder and brighter track or beat, which in this case would be doing the actual mastering, and then the export settings that you're gonna use to export that full format uncompressed version. And that's how a lot of people out there are getting their beats louder than yours, and you don't know why. Or you may just go in and up the gain, the master fader, and screw everything up and clip it. So don't do that, please. And before I close, I just wanted to say one last thing. I'm gonna bring up the mixer again. When you select everything pre-mastering stage and you bring the knobs down, if you're clipping, bring your gains down. If you have automated tracks, if you have tracks with automation, do not select them and bring them down. Instead, add a gain plugin and gain effect, which would be in your utility, and then apply whatever level of gain you're reducing individually. Bring it down here, because if you have something that has automation, it's not gonna do you any good downloading not downloading, what the hell, bringing down the volume, because it's automated. It's just gonna go to wherever it ended up being when you made the automation, and it's just gonna ignore whatever you did here. The way you do it is just put a gain plugin and you drop the whole gain, the whole volume of everything down, and then it's gonna add the automation minus the loss in gain or the reduction in gain that you gave it. And that's it for this tutorial. Next tutorial, I'm gonna go and create a beat from scratch. I tell you in advance that that's gonna be probably full freestyle. I'm just gonna put something in there, sample it, edit the hell out of it so it doesn't take 3 hours to watch the video, but I'm gonna make a sample beat and show you every other technique that was shown individually in the previous tutorials and put it together here, and then you'll be the judge if I did a good job or not, or if you understood a little bit without me talking as much. So in that video, I'm just gonna go straight and work and make little if no pauses to talk about what I'm doing, because that's why I created this separate video. So if you need more detail, you go to those videos, but if you just want to show and tell, do it yourself non-stop, then you just follow what I did. And I'm gonna make sure that I share also the sample, so that if you want, just recreate exactly what I did, you do the same way. And I'm probably just gonna leave the play with stock sounds. I'm not gonna go crazy with any drum kits or custom drum kits or sounds, because I just want you to go through the motions and do it yourself. Okay, so make sure to follow me on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, SoundCloud. Subscribe to my channel, Clormo Industries TV. If you like this video, please share it, like it, or dislike it if you didn't, and comment on it. I want to thank everybody that has followed me recently in social media and that has given me feedback through social media too. It means a lot. I appreciate it. I'm doing everything I can to do the same for all of you. Just because I believe in that. Some people don't believe in it. Some people think that, well, somebody follows me, I don't have time. I try to make time. That's why sometimes, or most of the times, I just sleep 3 hours a day. Doesn't bother me at all. So See you in part number 9, which will be the last part, me creating a beat. Thanks again for everything. Peace out, YouTube.